Brad Marchand cheered in Montreal. What a time to be alive.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B and Four Nations Face-Off. Today is Thursday, February 13th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. It's free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On the podcast today, we are going to discuss last night's thrilling game between Canada and Sweden in Montreal, the kickoff to the Four Nations Face-Off. We'll also discuss Brad Marchand and Sam Bennett being buddies, as well as quickly preview tonight's game between the USA and Finland featuring Jeremy Swayman, Charlie McAvoy. We'll also touch a bit on Elias Lindholm's performance last night as well. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. Now, for anyone who was concerned that the Four Nations Face-Off may end up being just a glorified all-star event, that was quickly set aside last night with Canada and Sweden playing a very memorable opener. We haven't had true best-on-best hockey since 2016, the World Cup, a game I was fortunate enough to attend in Toronto. And what a return it was as Team Canada was able to hold off Team Sweden in overtime. Mitch Marner of the Toronto Maple Leafs getting a rousing ovation from the Montreal crowd. Who would have ever thought that would happen as he popped the game winner past Philip Gustafsson of the Minnesota Wild. Now, Canada got off to a fantastic start in this one. A power play goal from McDavid to Crosby to McKinnon. And then it was our own captain, Brad Marchand, who made it 2-0 for Team Canada later on in the first period on an assist from Seth Jarvis. It was a beautiful play as Marchand was able to sneak in past the defense and pot his first of the tournament from Jarvis and Braden Point. It was Point who got the primary assist in this one. Marchand making his presence felt early on, and of course he wasn't playing a prime role for Team Canada, but did enough to help them build a lead over Team Sweden that they did, yes, cough up eventually, but scoring that goal was huge for him, and you could see the elation on his face. We all remember the iconic, I posted it before puck drop last night, iconic shot of him in Toronto in the World Cup, scoring a game winner. He's high off the ice, jumping with an Air Canada sign in front of him, and he relishes being part of Team Canada, playing in these best-on-best tournaments, and he certainly does have an eye on playing for Canada at the 2026 Olympics. And with his performance last night, yes, in a supporting role, he certainly is making a case to be a member of that squad next year. Beyond, who knows? The NHL did announce yesterday that there will be a rotation, kind of like in soccer where you have the World Cup and then the Euros. We're going to have a Olympics and then the World Cup every 2 years. So you can expect a World Cup in 2028 with 8 nations facing off. Who knows if Russia will be back in the mix by then. I don't know if it's controversial to say I kind of miss Russia in these tournaments. It would be fantastic to see Alex Ovechkin chasing Wayne Gretzky's record and participating in this tournament as well. But alas, it is what it is, and they are out of the picture. But there were some very memorable moments here in last night's game, including that Brad Marchand goal and his elation. The Bruins tweeting out after Boston Bruin, Brad Marchand, cheered in Montreal. There was Mitch Marner's goal, of course. Sidney Crosby with 3 assists, proving once again that he is still one of the best players in the game, despite the Penguins being outside of the playoff picture for the past couple of years. He was joined before puck drop by Mario Lemieux, a Montreal native who got a rousing ovation, probably the loudest of the night, until the crowd started cheering Crosby in overtime, where he was able to eventually find Mitch Marner for the game winner. Now, when it comes to Marchand, he saw only 11 minutes and 22 seconds of ice time last night. The third fewest minutes among Canadian forwards, along with Travis Konechny, who had 11:07 and 10:20, and Seth Jarvis, who had 11 minutes and 7 seconds of ice time. Marchand only had 17 shifts, which again tied for fewest with Jarvis. Konechny 1 fewer. He did, however, generate 2 shots on goal. He had a hit in this one. He had that goal and was as important as anybody to Canada's success. Now, on the other side of things, Elias Lindholm had a bit of a quiet game. He was noticeable perhaps on 1 or 2 shifts, but he too was playing in a limited role on the 4th line with Victor Arvidsson and Gustav Nyquist. 10 minutes, 47 seconds of ice time. He was able to generate 1 shot, 2 blocks, and 2 hits, as some of Sweden's more star-powered players were carrying the load, namely William Nylander, Mika Zibanejad, Rickard Rakell, Lucas Raymond, Philip Forsberg, and others. And then on the back end, of course, Gustav Forsling, Victor Hedman, Erik Karlsson. A very good effort by Sweden to come back in this game. They were, of course, down 2-0 after the first period. It took them a long time to generate their first shot on goal, but they came on slowly in the second. Were able to tie it up in the third, and it was just a thrilling overtime session where, to his credit, Canadian goaltender Jordan Binnington made some big saves. He looked very shaky on a couple of the goals scored. He was screened, but yeah, there were some that he probably should have had, but he came up big in the overtime session to give Canada a chance to get 2 points in this one. If you're not familiar with the format of this tournament, it's 3 points for a regulation win, 2 points for an overtime win, as well as 1 point for an overtime loss. So Canada now with 2 points, Team USA with an opportunity to go up with 3 points tonight as they are set to take on Team Finland. But the big story from last night, Brad Marchand scoring that huge goal for Team Canada. He and Mitch Marner, obviously often booed in Montreal, and I think Marchand even said that he still heard a couple boos here and there, but they were cheered, standing ovation from the Canadian fans, because the great thing about international hockey is that no matter what your NHL affiliations are, those are largely set aside for the sake of your country. And we've seen that even in Brad Marchand and Sam Bennett of the Florida Panthers coming together. And that's something we'll discuss here as the podcast continues. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk on a road trip or just need a quick protein boost, they are always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine, free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And two teams that really do not like each other are the Boston Bruins and the Florida Panthers. Two straight playoff series where the Panthers beat Boston, one in very upsetting and shocking fashion. And last year, it was not highlighted, but low-lighted perhaps by Sam Bennett taking a run at Brad Marchand with a sneaky punch to the face, holding his stick, and Marchand missing some time in that series. Turn the page to 2025, and these two are now teammates and seemingly getting along just fine. This is from Matt Vautour of MassLive.com, and Brad Marchand was quoted as saying, he and Bennett are each working towards the same goal, trying to accomplish the same thing. Those are things you don't worry about when you're here. Bygones are bygones. He added, that's the great thing about hockey players. Whatever happens on the ice is not personal. We're out there to do a job. You can't take it personally. We've chatted a lot. He's a really good dude, Marchand said of Bennett. No issues there. And Bennett kind of sent the love back to Marchand, saying it's the first time he's really gotten to know Brad, and he's a super nice guy, super friendly. They've had some great talks and great conversations. Bennett added, you can be as competitive as we are when you go against each other, but it all goes away as soon as you put on the same sweater. We're all looking for the same goal, and that's to win. Anything that happens on the ice, it's never personal. I'm just doing whatever it takes to win. What a crazy world we live in when these two guys who seemingly despise each other playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs can come together, put on the same Canadian jersey, and not only that, but actually get along and show that, hey, they're just human beings. They're trying to do a job out there. They're trying their best to win, and stuff happens. That's part of it, especially when it comes to playoff hockey. And that's something Marchand said back in the playoff series against the Panthers, saying Bennett plays hard. He got away with a bit of a shot, but he can't complain because he's been on the other side of a lot of plays where you think you try to get away with something. It's all part of playoff hockey. He didn't like being on the other end of it, but that kind of stuff happens. It's not dissimilar to when Tyler Bertuzzi came on to the Bruins, and he and Marchand, who had some animosity in the past, got along. It's the same with Pat Maroon coming aboard last year as a member of the Boston Bruins and being embraced in the locker room. And it's a testament to the kind of guys they are, that they can indeed put that aside for this common goal. Now, do we believe Marchand doesn't have any kind of bitter feelings towards Bennett for taking him out of the playoff round, for the Panthers beating the Bruins in the playoffs 2 years in a row? I mean, it's hard to say, but from my experience in discussing these kind of things with hockey players, for them, it is a way of life. It is their passion, their job, and it's perhaps not as personal or as life and death as we fans make it out to be. And they're often a lot more chill about it than we are, to be honest. I mean, you see, even just listening to the Kelsey Brothers podcast the other day, Travis and his brother Jason talking about the Super Bowl loss to the Chiefs, the feelings that one had playing for the Eagles in the past, the other losing to the Eagles, and it's just didn't get the job done. It sucks, but at the end of the day, you have each other, you have these relationships that you've created over the years, you have all these wonderful memories of let's be honest, playing hockey for a living is a very privileged position. And when it comes to complaints, regrets, and the like, it's hard to hold on to those, even grudges, because everybody understands what goes into it and what it takes to win, especially in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And thankfully, last night's game kind of had those kind of vibes. I was afraid, like I said off the top, that it would be kind of a glorified all-star game with guys taking it easy on each other. It was very high-level hockey last night. I think Drew Doughty said it was the fastest hockey game he had ever played in. Whether or not that's just time catching up with him or not, as one of the elder statesmen on Team Canada and one of the slower players, to be honest. But watching that game, you could see such high-end skill on display, and it was such a treat to watch. Yes, the Four Nations face-off isn't the most meaningful tournament ever to be played in international hockey, but you can tell that these guys are passionate about these couple games, this tournament. You can tell that these players want to win. You can see how guys stepped up last night, like Sidney Crosby with the 3 assists, Connor McDavid just trying to make magic on every shift. Mitch Marner coming up big in Montreal. He said, you tell 10-year-old Mitch that he scored an overtime goal assisted by Sidney Crosby, the guy he looked up to since day one. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And then you feel for the Swedes as well. They put in a good fight. They had a chance to win in overtime. Binnington with some big saves. Again, difficult for me to really root for that guy, but he came up big for Team Canada, and now they have their first win, albeit in overtime, with Team USA having a chance to jump into first place with a regulation win tonight against Team Finland. We'll preview that one here coming up. Also should mention Canada lost defenseman Shea Theodore for the remainder of the tournament. Looked like he was hit into the boards by Adrian Kempe early in the second, did not return. Looked like he was favoring his wrist a little bit. So that is certainly a concern or a risk here with this tournament, because there was some physicality there last night. Guys were indeed leveling each other, taking the body. There was even a couple scrums in front of the net. And I expect that to be even more evident on Saturday night when Canada and USA take each other on, which is going to be must-see TV. But for now, it is USA-Finland, and it's a game we'll discuss here as the podcast continues. Are you looking to optimize your nutrition this year? Well, Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle. Whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. The convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, just great food in minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/lockedonNHL50 off and use code LockedOnNHL50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LockedOnNHL50 off at factormeals.com/lockedonNHL50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Great start to the tournament last night, and tonight we will get USA versus Finland, as our boy Charlie McAvoy will be in action. Jeremy Swayman, not so much, as Connor Hellebuck, and rightly so, will get the start for USA. Not even sure if Swayman will back up, to be honest, as Jake Ottinger is also on the roster. Now, Team Finland, not expected to do a whole lot in this tournament, but they still have some players that you need to keep an eye on. Of course, Mikko Rantanen, Sebastian Aho, Alexander Barkov, to name a few, Mikael Granlund, Teuvo Teravainen. They actually have a pretty decent forward core. Former Bruin Eric Haula taking part in this tournament as well. Their defense, though, a bit suspect. Esa Lindell, Nico Mikkola, Oli Mata, Juuso Välimäki, and Mentapalo on the back end for Team Finland. Some guys, quite frankly, I'm not very familiar with. Team USA is led in scoring this season by Jack Eichel, Kyle Connor, both of whom I had on my keeper fantasy team less than a year ago, but have since traded, which I really regret. They're just absolutely loaded, this team is, and could be the favorite to win. Charlie McAvoy, not likely to get a prime deployment against Finland tonight. He's kind of a depth defenseman for this team with Zach Werenski, Adam Fox, kind of your two primary guys. McAvoy was skating with Zach Werenski in practice and was also on the first penalty kill unit for Team USA as well. So he could get some good minutes from his father-in-law, Mike Sullivan, head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins, who's behind the bench for Team USA. To finish off, I should add that Brad Marchand did indeed address the trade option on the table for him, speaking on the What Chaos podcast the other day, saying it would be odd to be traded. He doesn't expect to be traded. He wants to remain a member of the Boston Bruins. He said it would be very weird to play for another team. He'd probably be a little lost, but he hasn't really thought about it, doesn't really want to think about it because it's not something that he really sees happening. He wants to play with the Bruins forever. He loves Boston. His family loves it there. It's all he knows. And what he loves most about it is that the expectations that are put on the group by management, ownership, the team itself, they're to be good every year, and that's what you want to be a part of. Now, like I mentioned the other day, the Bruins haven't been shy to move on from players in the past if the right deal is presented, or maybe not even the right deal, dating back to Joe Thornton, Ray Bourque, Jason Allison as former captains. Milan Lucic, Dougie Hamilton were traded at the 2015 NHL draft. Tyler Seguin, Zdeno Chara was basically told to leave. Linus Ullmark was just traded. So it's certainly possible, but still unlikely at this point, as Marchand still very much valued in Boston, loved by the fans, and still a lot left in his game. Now, on tomorrow's episode, I'll be back to discuss Charlie McAvoy and maybe Jeremy Swayman's contributions tonight in the USA-Finland game. We'll also preview the USA-Canada game on Saturday and bring you all the latest on the Boston Bruins, although most guys are probably off vacationing at this point. General Manager Don Sweeney is in Montreal as General Manager of Team Canada. Hope you're all doing well, taking care of yourselves, taking care of each other, and we'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.